G'day and welcome along to another amazing array of first-class cars driven by the F1 drivers at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in Jeddah, with the compliments of Crisp. Let's kick it off with seven-time World Drivers' Champion Lewis Hamilton. He was driving an S450. Now this is the most technically advanced and luxurious Mercedes in its range. It's a sedan, it's not an SUV. He was driving an SUV last race in Bahrain. That was a GLE 53. So who comes in with Lewis in that car? Normally Angela Cullen drives, although in this race they actually had a driver. You can see him sitting in the passenger seat killing time while the drivers were doing their driving work, but also in the car with him would be his security guard, Lloyd, and sometimes his manager, Penny Tho. And that car sells in Australia for upwards of $225,000, which is around 130,000 British pounds. George Russell, well, I've got him down with two cars because interestingly and thankfully at this track, all the drivers' names are printed on signs and placed in front of their car park. So if I happen to miss them when they actually drive up to the gate, I can go and have a look in the car park, which I did. But I found this Merc parked in this spot one day, and then on another day, this black 560S, which sells for around $225,000 in Australia, which is roughly 115,000 British pounds. So who comes in with George? Well, normally it's just his trainer, Aleix Casanovas. And this race, he had his new manager, Henry Soden, with him. Henry is in charge of George's contracts and progressing his career, and previously Toto Wolff managed George. Speaking of Toto, what was he driving this race? This car, a GLE 450 in silver. He was dropped off at the gate to do a Skype meeting, I think. In fact, I do quite a few Skype meetings back to my office in Australia. And one of the problems I often have is background noise, because I like to be in, say, a hotel foyer or outdoors, but if there's too much noise, I'm in trouble. Unless I have something like Crisp. Crisp is AI-powered deep tech noise suppression software that can be used for online meetings, calls, and even high-quality audio recording. How does it work? Well, it suppresses background noise and it works bi-directional. So if I'm on a Zoom or a Skype meeting, I can have this software take out all of the background noise from me and from the other end as well. It works bi-directionally. But the best thing about Crisp is it's absolutely free. So if you click in the link in the description below, you can get up to 240 minutes free per week. I've been waiting a long time for software like this, and I think you'll find it invaluable as well. So to get Crisp, click on the link in the description below and get up to 240 minutes. That's 4 hours of Crisp noise suppression free every single week. As you probably realise, a lot of the cars that we see in the car park are rentals, and I'll get to a few of those later. I can tell you that Honda does provide these cars to the Red Bull drivers. Max was driving a Honda Accord 2.0T. This is a 2-litre sport trim Accord, and as you can see, it is sign written with Red Bull signage on the side and also the Oracle logo, their major sponsor. This car does 0 to 100 in 5.4 seconds, so it's pretty smart. And what about his teammate, Sergio Perez? What was he driving? I can tell you he's driving exactly the same model, the 2-litre sport version. Because these cars are provided by Honda, they are often delivered to the hotel where the drivers are staying at. So on a Thursday morning, say, when the drivers come to go to the track, they will simply walk outside and bang, there's their car on the driveway. And then on the Sunday night after the race, often they will just throw the keys back to the local distributor and head off to the airport, and somebody will come and collect those cars at a later date. Next up, the Ferrari drivers. And last race, you may remember that I showed you some Maseratis the boys were driving. Well, this race, they are driving Jeeps. Grand Cherokees, to be exact, a 7-seater car, 3 rows of seats, quite luxurious and big. Although in Charles' case, he was just arriving with his trainer, Andrea Ferrari. Yes, same surname as the team, Fortuitous. And Carlos, also in a black Grand Cherokee. This model sells for anywhere from 60 to 115,000 Aussie dollars in Australia. That's about 32,000 to 60,000 British pounds. And did you know that in 2020 it was the 15th best-selling car in the United States, selling over 200,000 units? Next up, McLaren driver Daniel Ricciardo. I want to say he was driving a stunning 720 McLaren. I can't. He was actually driving a Range Rover, a silver Evoque from Avis. So let me give you a word of warning about Avis in Jeddah. I've had 2 run-ins with them. One where they charged me for 12 days and only had it for 7. That was last year at the race. And this year, where they tried to charge me 1,300 rials for clearly a 900 rial trip. I caught them on the second effort, but the first effort I've been chasing them for weeks and weeks. So be very careful with Avis jitter, and if you have to rent from them, check everything. His teammate Lando Norris was also in an Evoque, this time a black one. These are handy cars, good size, you can fit quite a lot in them, and as you can see here, John Malvin, Lando's trainer, was charged with the responsibility once he dropped Lando off at the gate. He then had to unpack the car of a lot of laundry. Fernando Alonso from Alpine. Was he driving an Alpine? No. Last year I did catch him in a couple of European races driving the Alpines, but I'm not even sure if they're available in the Middle East, so instead he was in a very comfortable BMW 520i. A step up from the Nissan Patrol he was driving in Bahrain the race prior. That car sells for around 100,000 Australian dollars, about 52,500 UK pounds, does 0 to 100 in 7.9 seconds, and is quite comfortable to drive. Esteban Ocon, he was in a silver BMW, and typically he'll arrive at the track with just his trainer, who is Tom Clark, and on Sunday Esteban walked in on his own with his luggage. Pierre Gasly, the Frenchman, was driving a Honda, because of course the team is sponsored by Honda, and he was flying the flag for the Japanese company in an Accord, the 2.0T sport version. Yuki, on the other hand, had the slightly slower non-sport version. That does 0 to 100 in 7.2 seconds. Pierre would be coming in with his trainer, Piru Salmela, and you might have seen my recent video where I trained like an F1 driver for a week with Piru. It's worth having a look. I'll put the link in the description below. And Yuki came in with his trainer, Noel Carroll. In the 14 months or so since I've been doing these What the Drivers Drove videos, I've noticed Lance Stroll is one of the most consistent in driving an Aston Martin and tends to go with a DBX. Once again, he was in a DBX. This is a car that sells for around $360,000, does 0 to 100 in 4.5 seconds. This car wasn't quite as bright as the one he drove to Bahrain, but certainly in terms of luxury SUVs, it's a pretty impressive car. And who did he arrive with? His trainer, Henry Howe. Well, it's his new trainer. He's been with him for the first 2 races and testing, and I imagine will be with him the whole year. He changed last year from Martin Poole, who used to be Nico's trainer and was with Nico at races 1 and 2 this year. But as I mentioned, Henry Howe is now the new man. And mentioning Nico Hülkenberg, he was driving Kia's luxury SUV, the Sorento. Now, it has to be said that you could get about 7 Sorentos for the price of one Aston Martin DBX. Now, what I thought was the standout car of this particular race was driven by the Aston Martin team boss, Mike Crack. It's this beautiful white Aston Martin Vantage. It does 0 to 100 in 3.6 seconds, and to my eye, looks spectacular. Williams driver Nicholas Latifi was in a black Range Rover Evoque. He arrives at the track with his trainer Daniel Paget, and while Nicholas's girlfriend Sandra Jivashek was with him in Bahrain, she didn't make the trip to Saudi. In fact, I think there was only one driver who had a female acquaintance at the track, and that was Daniel Ricciardo. Heidi Berger was his guest in the McLaren suite, and on Sunday she helped Michael Italiano drag luggage for the group into the paddock as they were obviously leaving on a flight that night. And yes, she is the daughter of ex-racer Gerhard Berger. And the second of the 2 Williams drivers, Alex Albon, was in a very nice red Mercedes sedan. And Jost Capito, Williams team boss, had the 4th Range Rover Evoque at the track, and he broke ranks with the dark and dull colours with something a little more spicy. Alfa Romeo drivers, were they in Alfa Romeos? Negative. In fact, I can't tell you what they drove because their car park, and I'm talking both drivers and team boss, were empty every time I went out to check. Last race, Kevin Magnussen was driving this big Land Cruiser GXR. Well, this race he stepped down to a Kia Telluride. This vehicle does 0 to 100 in 7.1 seconds, sells for about $32,000 in the US. And will he be driving one of these in Australia? No, because from what I read, they aren't available in Australia. And finally, his teammate Mick Schumacher was driving a BMW X7. I used to have an X5. I remember it vividly because it was the first car I ever had with a screen in it, and you could even get television on it, although you couldn't watch that while you were driving. This car sells for around $140,000 here in Australia. That's about 73,000 UK pounds. Does 0 to 100 in 6.2 seconds. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I'm having meet and greets at a number of races this year. It's your opportunity to come along, and if you've got any pictures of mine you want signed, I'm happy to do it. You'll find details at my kimillman.com website, and then it's open to all YouTube members. If you're not a member, become a member. There's a whole host of benefits like a meet and greet invite. If you've enjoyed this video, show it by simply pressing the like button. It does help the algorithm. And subscribe if you haven't done so. You'll find a range of merchandise, F1 photo books and wall art at kimillman.com. And for my best pics live from the track and all during the week, head to Instagram and search at Kim Illman. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. Oh boy.